Hey everyone, welcome back to A Barrel's Tale, the channel where bourbon meets storytelling and your glass meets greatness. Today, we're diving into one of the most iconic and consistently praised bourbons on the market, Four Roses Single Barrel. Whether you're a neat sipper, a cocktail aficionado, or just bourbon curious, you're going to want to hear the story behind this rich Kentucky classic. Let's rewind the clock. The story of Four Roses Distillery begins in the late 1800s with Paul Jones Jr., a man who fell in love, not just with bourbon, but with a Southern belle who wore a corsage of 4 red roses. When she accepted his proposal, he named his bourbon in her honor, Four Roses. Romantic, right? The distillery was one of the few that survived Prohibition by obtaining a medicinal license. People were literally being prescribed bourbon back in the day. The brand took a long hiatus from the American market during the late 1950s to early 2000s. During that time it was mostly exported overseas. Fortunately, in the early 2000s it was reintroduced to the US, all thanks to master distiller Jim Rutledge. Now here's where things get tasty. What sets Four Roses Distillery apart is its unique approach to blending. Four Roses uses 2 mash bills and 5 proprietary yeast strains mixing and matching to create 10 distinct bourbon recipes. The single barrel expression focuses specifically on one recipe to stand apart. It uses the OBSV recipe of mash bill B, that's 60% corn, 35% rye, and 5% malted barley. That's a high-rye bourbon, which means it packs more spice than your typical sweet vanilla-forward bourbon. The V yeast strain brings delicate fruitiness, think pears and apples, while the S simply denotes that it is a straight bourbon. The high-rye brings in a signature spice. These hand-picked barrels are selected for their standout flavor profiles, and at 100 proof, you know you're in for a bold pour. While there's no age statement, it is typically aged 7 to 9 years. This is the sweet spot where the oak influence is rich, but never overwhelming. You'll notice a remarkable balance of depth and drinkability, not something every 100 proof bourbon can boast. Alright, let's get to the good stuff. How does it taste? On the nose it greets you with a bouquet of ripe red fruit. The rye adds baking spices, and then there is the addition of the toasted oak. There's a soft floral undertone in the background, a signature of their yeast strain, alongside subtle hints of vanilla and cinnamon. Let's take a sip. The palate opens with rich caramel, honey, and a burst of dark cherries. This is followed by a wave of spice, thick black pepper and clove, from that high-rye content. The oak influence brings structure but doesn't overwhelm. The finish is long, warm, spicy, and lingers with hints of spice, stone fruit, and just a whisper of cocoa. This is a bourbon that knows how to say goodbye, slowly and with class. If you are sipping this with food, go bold but balanced. Try pairing it with a char-grilled ribeye. The caramelized char plays beautifully with the bourbon spice and fruit. Roasted duck with cherry glaze is another option. It matches the darker fruit tones and enhances the mouthfeel. Or for dessert, dark chocolate tart with a pinch of sea salt. You'll thank me later. It is enjoyable neat or on the rocks. For cocktails it shines in an old-fashioned, where its rye spice cuts through the sugar cube and orange oils. A boulevardier, which lets the fruit and spice interplay with bitter Campari. Or even a Manhattan, though you'll want to dial back the vermouth just a touch to let the spirit's complexity do the talking. Four Roses. Single barrel delivers exceptional value, layered complexity, and a refined consistency that rivals pricier bottles, all while staying true to its romantic roots. That's a wrap on today's Barrel's Tale. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and let me know in the comments your favorite way to enjoy Four Roses Single Barrel. Until next time, keep your glass half full and your stories full-bodied. Cheers!